And here now to talk about today's report is the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux. Mr. Giroux, good to have you here on Primetime Politics again.
A pleasure. Thank you.
So you're projecting that the federal government will have to commit more to Volkswagen than what's been announced because of this $2.8 billion that the government hasn't accounted for in its public costing. Can you walk me through what exactly you're talking about with that $2.8 billion? Where is that coming from?
Sure. So the government's stated aim when it offered these subsidies to Volkswagen was to match what the company would get under the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, had it decided instead to establish in the U.S. Under the IRA, the tax assistance would be provided through tax credits, so not taxable, whereas in Canada, subsidies of that nature are taxable under the Income Tax Act. So what we have accounted for is that if the government, as its stated aim has indicated, wants to match the U.S. IRA, it has to increase its offer by $2.8 billion. So, and that's based on public statements as well as documents that were provided to us by the government, various departments. So it's quite clear that the government will have to either match the U.S. IRA by increasing the amount by $2.8 billion, or amend the Income Tax Act should it decide to do it in a different way.
Okay, so we did hear from the finance minister, and she says you and the government, you're working off similar numbers that it's accounted for in the fiscal framework. But she says this $2.8 billion, she says it's a hypothetical conclusion about future tax treatment. So is there any way that your calculation could end up at a different number, hypothetically?
Hypothetically, it's always possible. The government, as I said, could always choose to amend the Income Tax Act to make the assistance to Volkswagen non-taxable. It's always a possibility, but we're not aware of any such amendment being in the making or being before Parliament.
So do you know if there's any reason why the government would not have accounted for this, at least in its public presentation of what it was investing?
No, I don't know, because that's quite clear in all the documents we've seen and in public statements that were made that this is the logical conclusion.
Okay, so just taking a wider look at this Volkswagen investment, what can you say at this point about what the economic impact of this is going to be for the Canadian economy?
So we looked at the impact of the construction of the plant itself, and the construction of the plant will not lead to significant economic benefits. It will increase GDP by 0.01% and will create about 1,400 jobs by 2027, which is not an immense economic impact. The biggest impact will come from the operation of the plant, so the production of battery cells themselves, and we have not yet estimated the economic and fiscal impacts of that. We ran out of time. We wanted to release this report before the end of the parliamentary session, and there are also quite a number of provisions in the contract that we have seen that are confidential, and we weren't sure if using these numbers would breach confidentiality provisions. So we'll be looking at that, the impact of the production phase, in a couple of months once we have more time to do that.
Are you expecting to get whatever clearance you need to share those details with us?
I'm confident we'll be able to provide an updated report that will look at the economic impacts of the production itself, the production of batteries.
Okay, there's a lot of talk right now, obviously, about Stellantis, because that negotiation is ongoing after this Volkswagen announcement took place. What can you tell us about what your work on Volkswagen tells Canadians about these new negotiations with Stellantis and what the cost could end up reaching?
Well, what we saw with the assistance provided to Volkswagen is that it is very, very generous subsidies regarding production of batteries, and especially when comparing to the number of jobs that will allegedly be created. And it's not surprising that another company that is in the same business line wants comparable treatment. So it suggests that this is very generous and Stellantis wants similar treatment. So I'm wondering at what point will we see the conclusion of this race to subsidize battery production in the country. So it's a big question.
Okay, well, we'll keep watching for potential answers to those questions. Yves Giroux, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, thank you so much.
My pleasure.